Hey everyone, it's me, Rami Marks, your Tangled Yogi out here in Northern California. Welcome to the Flowing Grace Zentangle inspired class. I'm going to be teaching this class for the San Rafael Public Library, but I thought I would share it with you as well. So let's talk about the things that we're going to need for class today. I'm going to be working with my Micron PN Pen, the Sakura Identi pen. This is a nice thick nib pen for pooling ink. I'll be working with a Jelly Roll 10. This is a white gel pen from Sakura. I'll also be working with a graphite pencil and a blending stump. If you don't have a blending stump, don't worry about it. Grab a Q-tip out of the bathroom. You'll be just fine. It works great as a blending stump. You know me, I'm a Prismacolor girl, so grab your Prismacolor pencils. We're going to have a lot of fun with these. And hey, if you don't have Prismacolor pencils, don't worry about it. Grab whatever color pencils you have and play along. Now you know that I work on tiles that are 4.5 inches by 4.5 inches, and the paper is super smooth. It's really nice cardstock so that the color pencil goes on really nicely and you don't have to fight with any tooth. Now if you don't have cardstock, grab your favorite sketchbook and hopefully it's got some smooth pages in it that you can work on. With that said, let's get started with Flowing Grace. So many of you know that I like to do a little centering exercise before we get started with our creating. So let's go ahead and take a comfortable seated position. You can let your hands rest in your lap. Let your spine grow comfortably tall. Allow your shoulders to melt away from your ears here. And then when you feel ready, if you'd like, you can close your eyes and letting your attention come to your breath. And as you inhale, feel your body expand with breath. And as you exhale, feel the release. Inhaling and exhaling. And taking in another deep breath in through the nose and gently out through the mouth. And as we get ready to create today, thinking about your intention for class, what has drawn you into creating today? Maybe it's the opportunity to take a time out and just have some me time, or maybe it's the opportunity to learn something new. So just acknowledging what has drawn you to class today. And then taking in another deep breath right here. Let it go with a sigh. And in your own timing now, wiggling in the fingertips and wiggling in the toes, and gently adding vision back into your practice if you've closed your eyes. And let's get started. So I have my Zentangle pencil here. This is just a regular graphite pencil, and we're going to start by building our string here. I'm going to go to the side of my square here, and my tile is 4.5 inches by 4.5 inches. I'm going to come to the midpoint here and then just go up about 1/4 of an inch more. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little dot there, and then I'm going to turn my tile and I'm going to do the same thing over here, come to the midpoint and just a little bit above. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a square inside of my square here. And you can see that I'm just freehanding this. I'm not being overly perfectionistic with it. I'm just looking to build our string. So our string is going to look a little something like that. Okay, so we'll have a square inside of our square. You go ahead and do yours. I'm going to do mine, and then we're going to start tangling. Let's talk about our first tangle here. I'm hoping I'm going to pronounce this correctly. I believe it's called cochombros, and This is a beautiful tangle. It's a really nice, it almost feels like an origami star. So let's just go ahead and start with a scratch piece of paper or your favorite tangle book that you put your tangles in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by coming in and I'm going to make some lines here. So I've got my north and my south and my east and my west, right? And they're about the same size. I'm going to zoom in on this so you can really see it. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do my diagonal lines that are going to intersect through the center. You can see I'm still using my regular graphite pencil. Now above each of these little V's that we have here, you can see that I'm just making a little bit of a dot, and this is where I'm going to connect to each. So this is like right above each midsection. So I'm just going to go like this. And I'm just playing connect the dots with my my piece here. You can see that I'm just turning the tile as I go. That dot's a little low, so I'm going to make sure that I'm doing my best with these. Okay, so you can see that I've built a little star out of just creating these V's up top. Now, you guys know that I always like to look for letters inside of my Zentangles because for me it just helps my brain to see what's there. You can see when I'm looking at this, that looks like a V, right? So all I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it into a Y. See how I did that? So it went from a V to the letter Y. I'm going to go ahead and turn my tile. Here's my next point. All I'm doing is just turning it into the letter Y. And it's a lowercase y, not an uppercase Y. Same thing over here. Here's the V, and now I'm turning it into a lowercase y. Turning it. So you can see that they're coming out at a diagonal angle. I hope that that's clarifying enough for this. Turning the tile, lowercase y, turning the tile, lowercase y, turning the tile, lowercase y, so that you end up with something that looks like this. It almost looks like spokes on a wheel, right? Now, okay, put your thinking cap on because this is where it kind of puts your hair on fire a little bit. But once you get this part, you've got the whole thing. So you can see that I've got this little intersection right here. And you can see that I have this line right here. I am going to aura that line. Okay, here I go. I'm coming to the intersection and all I'm doing is making a line that is parallel to this one. Okay, here we go. Turning the tile clockwise here. Here's the line that I want to aura. Here's the intersection. Turning the tile clockwise here. Here's the intersection. Here's the line that I want to aura. Turn the tile. Here's the line that I want to aura. Here's the intersection. Turning the tile. Here's the intersection. Here's the line. One more time. Here's the line. Here's the intersection. Last one, right here. Here's the line. Here's the intersection. So that when we come back up, oop, I've got one more. Sorry, I lied. Oop. One more line right here. Here's the intersection. So that you end up with something that looks like this. Okay? Take a pause. Take a breath. I know that was a lot of information. But here we are. We're going to do it. All right, so here's the next part. Remember this area right in here? All we're going to do is we're going to close it off just like so. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a line down, and you can see that that makes a triangle. I'm going to turn my tile clockwise here. I'm going to close this off, and then I'm going to come down right here, and you can see how that makes a little triangle. Turning the tile, close it off, bring it down, and go to the next one. Close it off, make a triangle, and go to the next one. Close it off, make a triangle, go to the next one. Close it off, make a triangle, one more. Oh wait, no, there's two more. And then here comes the last one. Okay, is your hair on fire? My hair's on fire. But I hope that you like what you see on your page, because we're going to go ahead and we're going to start to put it into our piece here. All right, so take a breath. I know you can do this. And even if we have to do it a couple of times together, I know that we can get through it. All right, take a breath and I'll see you in a minute. Here we go. All right, so I'm working inside that smaller square in here. Let's go ahead and divide the space. So I'm just going to come in and make a dividing line, and then I'm going to turn my piece and I'm going to make another dividing line. Now once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go and make a diagonal line, and then I'm going to go ahead and make another diagonal line, just like so. Now once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start to come up on each of these lines a little bit more than an inch and make a dot. Okay, so I'm just coming out and making a dot, a little bit more than an inch, and you'll see that as I'm turning my tile, it's going to start to look like a circle of dots. So that you end up with something like this. Now once I have that, I'm going to start to make some V-like shapes here. So I'm just going to come up, make a point in between these two dots, and then I'm going to connect them. I'm going to turn my tile, come up in between those two dots, make a point, and connect them. Turning the tile, come up, make a dot, and connect. Turning the tile, come up and make a dot, connect. Turning the tile, and one more time. Here we go. And last one right here. So you can see that it gives me this really fun star shape. Now, remember when we were talking about the letter Y? I want you to think of Y not as the capital Y, but as a lowercase y. Okay, so not straight, but like a diagonal line. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to this one. You can see it looks like a V, and all I'm going to do is just extend it to make it look like a lowercase y. Okay, turning the tile, same thing. Turning the tile, and just making the letter Y. So now you can see I've had a chance to go all the way around to do this. Now if you want to take your eraser and just come in here and get rid of those string lines for your horizontal and your diagonal lines, you can go ahead and just get rid of those lines because those were just string lines, so you don't really need to have those anymore. And that way you'll end up with the star and the spokes, but no longer having those intersecting lines that can be a little bit confusing. So it'll end up looking a little something like this. So go ahead, take your time with that. And then when we come back, I'm going to start to go around and start to connect everything so that you have it ready to go. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to come back in right here, and you can see that this looks like a backwards L. I'm going to come to this intersection and I'm going to aura or parallel this line. So what it's going to look like is I'm going to come up and parallel that line. I'm going to go ahead and go to the next one. Here's the backwards L. There's the intersection that I'm going to start from and connect. Turning the tile and connect. Turning the tile, connect. Turning the tile, looking for that backwards L. Turning the tile, turning the tile. Last time for that backwards L right in here so that you have something that looks a little something like this. Now once I've got that, I'm going to go ahead and close off the box. I'll turn the tile. Here it is, closing off the box. Turning the tile, close it off. Keep on closing them off. So that you end up with something that looks like this. Now, once you've got all your boxes closed off, we're going to just come right up to the point of the box and draw a little line that comes down, and see how that made a little triangle right there? We're going to do it again, coming up to this box right here and make a little triangle right there. Turn the tile, come up to the top of the box, make a little line that makes a little triangle. Turn the tile, make your triangle. Triangle. And just keep floating right off the top of each of these boxes, or right off the corner of each of these, so that you end up with something that looks like this. All right? So take a moment. I know that that was a little bit crazy. If your hair's on fire, you're not alone. All right. When we come back, we're going to start to add more to our string. So I'm going to take my eraser and I'm going to remove the box. You can see that I'm just letting go of it the best that I can, so that now my star is just kind of floating in space here. I'm going to take that star and just bring it over to the right hand corner here. I'm going to pick up my pencil, and you can see that I've got this really nice point right in here. I'm going to go up into this corner right here, and I'm going to come away from the top probably about an inch, maybe an inch and a half, and I'm going to make a series of curved lines that are going to come in towards my star here. So if you need to turn it on the diagonal to get it to work for your hands, or you may decide to go in the other direction, it just really depends on what you want. So I'm just going to make a soft curved line, and I'm going to let it land right in the center there. I'm going to let that come out, and we're going to get this kind of almost, I don't know how to even describe this, like a stream that's coming out of the star. So I'm going to go ahead again, and I'm going to turn my piece, and I'm going to create another curved line that's going to come out right about here, and just create a point that goes in, and then I'm going to have it come right back out. Okay? I'm going to turn the tile. I'm going to come up right about here. I'm going to do a curved line that comes in, and then it comes right back out again. So it's almost like a series of V's with a little bit of a curvature to it. So coming in, creating a soft curved line, and then right back out again. Always looking for this nice point. Turning the tile. Nice curved line. And then for this one right here, I'm going to come over towards the corner a little bit. Nice curved line. And let it come back out again, so that when I land, I've got all these nice streams coming off of the piece here, which is definitely going to give this a place to work in. So you can see I'm going to be working inside each of these V's, which is really nice. I'm going to pick up my pen here and I'm going to start to ink in my piece here. Now you can go ahead and just follow the lines that you have, or you can do it the way that I always do it, which is I start with the way that I tangle the piece. And so you can watch me here as I go, or you can just go ahead and do yours. It's really up to you. But all I'm doing is I'm just retracing my steps as to how I started the piece. And for me, what this does is it helps me to get a felt memory of the tangle that I created. They say that the body actually keeps memory of shapes and forms, and so for me, whenever I'm working with pencil and I'm working with a tangle that might be slightly complicated, you know, when I come back to ink it in, I really feel like I've learned what I've created. And so I'm going to go back and look for the Y. So you can see that I'm right here looking for the Y. Always looking for the Y. I also think that it helps your lines as you're retracing your steps. You're thinking about what you're doing. And then of course now I'm going to look for the backwards L. And then of course remembering to close off and create the triangle. And there you have it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trace my lines where all my V's are, and then when we come back we're going to learn another tangle. Okay, so our next tangle is called Lelu, and I might be slightly obsessed with this tangle. It's just one of those tangles that I just really think is very elegant. And so what it looks like is you start out with the tangle flux, which is just an upside down teardrop, and then you're going to do an aura around it. And then once you have that aura, you're going to start to create almost a cloud-like shape and bring it down. And then you'll do a narrow aura of that cloud-like shape, just like so. And if you want to, you can go ahead and do another series of cloud-like shapes, and you can see that I'm giving it a little bit more space, and then a narrow aura. Now, for the stem of this, I'm just going to go ahead and create a nice soft stem that's going to come down and in. But some of the time that I've seen Lelu, you can also come in and create these nice spiral or hook-like shapes that go around it, which I think is really beautiful. Okay, so let's go ahead and start to put it in the piece. I'm going to work in the biggest shape that I have in here, this nice V shape that I have, and we're going to start to put Lelu into this, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to do it for this particular piece. I'm actually going to start with that nice almost candy cane shape for the stem. So I'm not going to go above the halfway point. I'm going to start right a little bit below it. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to start by creating a nice candy cane shape that's going to dive down into the center of that V. I'll go ahead and I'll give it a little aura, just like so. And then I'm going to come over here and start a nice hook-like shape and give it a little bit of an aura. Once I have that, I now have a starting point. I'm going to go ahead and do a nice small flux, and I'm going to give it a nice narrow aura. I'm going to come in again from this point, and I'm going to start to create that cloud shape. And I'm going to give it a nice narrow aura. I'll come back in again, giving this a nice cloud shape. You can see that it's got a thicker aura to it. And then I'm going to come back in and give it a narrow aura. And it's okay if you fall off the page. It always looks beautiful when you play the edge. But you can see, isn't that such an elegant tangle? I just love it. So let's go to some of the smaller ones and do a couple of those. For me, my rule of thumb is that I don't go past the halfway point when I'm creating the stem. So I'm just going to go ahead and make that candy cane shape, let it dive down into the V, do an aura, and then I'll do another arch, let it come in, and then once again, coming in, flex shape, narrow aura. Coming up again, this time it's a cloud-like shape, and an aura. Here we go again. Nice thick cloud here. You see I'm going to touch the edge, but I'm not going out of it. And then I'm going to do an aura around it. And you can see that I'm kind of doing a little bit of holly-baw with it so that it doesn't go out of the V. Isn't that such a pretty tangle? All right, so I'm going to go all the way around and do this. Now, I know that there's probably going to be the question of the smaller V's that we have in here. Now, for mine, when I did my original one, always keeping with that rule of thumb, never going past the halfway point, so these will be smaller. So maybe you don't do as many auras. So you can see that I've got a little bit of my flux, and then I might get part of a cloud shape in there, and that's all that'll fit. So I'm just thinking about what I can put into those spaces, so even smaller in here and maybe a little bit bigger in there. So you can keep playing with these and having fun inside of each of the V's. Now, if you want to add a little bit of extra detail into these little areas in here with the V's, one of the things that I like to do is I like to do an interrupted line. And so what that looks like is a couple of dots, and then a line, and then a couple of dots, and then a line. You can see I'm really hugging the edge of the V here, and then I'll come over to the other side. And what it does is it gives a little bit of texture to the outside space, which I think always makes things a little bit interesting. So you can see that just by doing a little bit of that, it gives the outside a little bit of interest. Now you can see that on this one, my tangle is touching the edge, and that's okay. So if you wanted to do an interrupted line and then just work around your tangle, you can work around the tangle just by using the holly-baw method. And for me, I just think it gives it a little bit of that unique quality that wouldn't have been there otherwise. So if you want to go ahead and put that in, go ahead and play. So once I've got this the way I want it here, I'm going to go ahead and start to create a border that has a little bit of an interruption to it as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to work on this side right here, and you can do it on the right hand side if you want, depending on which hand you use as your dominant hand. And in between the V's here, I'm going to create a frame. So you're going to see this drop down, and then I'll turn my tile, creating a nice frame here, letting it come over and in, turning my tile, and just continuing to create a nice border around the piece so that it really contains everything, but it almost makes it look like these are bursting out of the border. So I'll just take my pen and start to build my border, and I can see that some of my lines were a little funky going away around, and so this is where you can clean up your lines a little bit if you need to. And you can see I'm just freehanding it. I'm not going to use a ruler. I'm not looking for perfection here. But I love the interweaving of the border in here. I just think that it's just really interesting and elegant. And there you have it. It really does give this a little bit of containment, which is really interesting. And it's going to help us lead up to our next particular tangle. All right, so I'll see you in a minute. So this particular piece kind of evolved a little bit differently than I expected. You know, sometimes I'll start a piece and I just don't even know where it's going to go. And so for me, you know, I love to do wallpaper. And our next tangle is actually going to be done completely in wallpaper. So I'm going to start by picking up a little bit of one of my favorite colors in the Prismacolor set. This is yellowed orange. Now for those of you who don't have Prismacolors, just grab a nice warm yellow out of your Prismacolor set. You can see that my pencil is really well sharpened up, and that's because we've got a lot of space to fill and we want to fill it in a timely manner. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here, and I'm just going to start with this really nice corner in here. I think that that's always an easy place to begin. So I'm going to take that pencil, and you can see the way I'm holding it. I'm pretty far back, and I'm going to lay the side of the pencil down, and I'm just going to start to rub the pencil into the paper very, very lightly. So I'm not using a lot of pressure. I'm just coming in, and I'm going to give this a little bit of pigment inside of the frame. I'm not going to let it go outside. I'm going to let it stay inside. And you can see that just by laying that pencil down on its side, I'm able to fill the space in a very timely manner. I think that took maybe a matter of 30 seconds to do this. So I'm going to go into all of these in-between spaces and use that very same technique. You go ahead and do yours. So you can see I've just done that very light wash of color all the way around the piece here, and this is really coming rather quickly. I think it probably took me maybe a minute and a half, and it just depends on how long you've been working with color pencils. You know, it may take you a little bit longer, but I wasn't being overly precious about it, and I'm not blending this because I know that I'm going to be doing a lot of work over the top of it. Okay, so let's talk about our next tangle here. Our next tangle is called Crazy Patience, and I really, really love this tangle because they look like impatience. And so what it's going to look like is I'm going to start by doing a nice circle, and then I'll do a line here, a line here, and a line here. And then I'll come out on each of these and then I'll do one that's going down. Okay? I'm going to connect by going around to each of these. So that I end up with a flower that looks like an impatient. And then at the top of each of these, I'm going to give it a little bit of definition. And then what she does is she has some little flicks that come out from the center to give it a little bit of texture. And that is crazy patience, which I love. So let's write this out. Crazy patience. So let's go ahead and bring this into our piece here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually pick up my yellow again, and we are going to be using the wallpaper technique. Now I will also grab the color orange, which is PC 918, and then I'm also going to pick up crimson red, which is PC 924. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by zooming in on that first spot that we were working with. And what I love doing is I love layering tangles together. And so what this is going to look like is, you can still see I've got a nice point on that pencil. I'm going to start by creating a nice circle. Now you can tell that I'm pressing about medium pressure on that pencil. I'm going to start to do those lines that we had here and bring it in just like so. Now once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and do those arches that are going to connect. Now these might go behind, just like so, so that I end up with a flower like so. And I'm going to go ahead and create those nice little defined pieces at the top just by adding a little bit of a triangle wherever I can. This one's off the page, so I'm just going to leave it alone, and that one's off the page, so I'm going to leave that alone. Now what I'm going to start to do is I'm going to start to give this a little bit of shading. So I'm going to let go of my yellow pencil and I'm going to pick up my orange pencil. I'm going to do a little dusting right on the edge of the petals here of the orange. Now with the orange, I don't have to press very hard in order to get that shading to start happening. So you can see that I'm just building it up here. And then I'm going to come in with a little bit of that red, and I'm just going to give this a little bit of shading right on the edge with the red. Coming in over here and then over there. And you can already see that this is starting to get very nice definition here. I'm going to give it a couple of flicks with my pencil. And then I'm going to pick up that yellow that I started with, and you can see where the line of demarcation is, right where that red is meeting the orange. I'm just going to go very, very lightly and blur the two into each other. And then as I move towards the center of the impatient here, I'm going to just lighten up my touch. So I'm just blurring those two together, and then as I move towards the center, I lighten up. Same thing over here, and same thing over here. So I'm just softening it up. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to work with the center here just by bringing a little bit of that orange in here, and you'll notice that I'm leaving a little bit of a light source right over there. I'm going to pick up a little bit of that red Give it a little bit of a dusting. And then you guessed it, I'm going to pick up a little bit of that yellow and I'm going to blur the two into each other. And it gives you that really fabulous wallpaper. Isn't that so cool? I just love that. So let's do another one. Now, here's where we start to get into the overlap and the underlap, which is one of my favorite things about Zentangle. So I'm going to start this one really close. There's my circle. Here comes my lines. I'm going to go over here, one over there. I'll do a small one there and a small one there. So I know full well that you're not going to see all of that flower in there. So I'm going to do a nice arch and another arch and an arch over here and then an arch over there. Picking up my orange and then going about putting a little shading in the edge. Love the way that that looks. Picking up a little bit of the red. I need to give that a little bit of definition on those edges here. I forgot to put in my little V's, but you can always put them in, it doesn't matter. And then once I have that, I'll pick the red back up again and do those little flicks. And then you know me, I love to go in there and blur my edges and then soften it up as I get towards the center. Isn't that so pretty? Let's go ahead and do one last one together. Let's put one in right here. I'm going to go ahead and just bring that in. And then I'll go ahead and put one down there, doing the arches. That one's going to go behind. This one's going to go behind. Bringing in the orange. I hope you're enjoying layering these because I really loved that experience. And then picking up some of that red and bring it into the outer edges, just like so. And then creating those little detail lines. And then coming back in and blurring it out. And what I love about this is that it just creates a really nice soft texture without taking away from the foreground. That, for me, is where, wallpaper really plays a big part. Let's come into the center of these with a little bit of the orange. And then a little bit of the red, just to give it a little interest. And that just looks really, really cool. So I'm going to go around to each of these and do that same thing. I'm going to bring back in my originals so that you can actually see what I did. So I let them just kind of fill up the space and flow outward, which was really, really fun. And we'll talk about doing the shading on the outside edges at the very, very end. So just go ahead and bring those crazy impatience in there and have some fun with these, okay? Such a great time playing with these. So I'm going to take a little bit of the orange and I'm going to start to look for corners. And I'm just going to do a really, really soft dusting into these corners just to give this a little bit of interest. So you can see that I'm really just playing into those corners there. And I might even put some a little bit along this line. Now I'm going to take a little bit of that red and I'm going to put it right into the points of those corners. And then maybe just a little bit along the edge. And then you know me, I'm going to pick up that yellow again and start to blur everything out. And I'll lighten my touch as I get closer to where those impatiens are. And you can see that that brings a nice definition into it, whereas this doesn't have it. And look at how this kind of holds the space for that. So once again, a little bit of orange in the points. And I probably could add another impatient in here, and I may just, but we'll see how it goes. And then a little bit of red. And then I'll come in and I'll blur it out with a little bit of that yellow. And you can see that as I move towards those impatients, I lighten up my touch so that it just starts to seep into that area. And isn't that so pretty? Okay, so go ahead and work on your corners, and then when we come back, we're going to start to work with Lelu. Isn't that so fun? I hope you're enjoying it. All right, so let's talk about Lelu. Lelu is so fun to shade. It's one of my favorites. In fact, this whole particular tangle or composition, it really just, it hit a sweet spot for me with shading. I just had a really great time with it. So let's go ahead and talk about Lelu. So I'm going to let go of the oranges and I'm going to pick up some blues. I've got denim blue in my hand, which is PC 1101. And then I also have in my hand light aqua PC 992. These two are just such a great match. And if you're not using Prismacolors, go ahead and grab a light blue and a dark blue and you're good to go. So let's talk about shading Lelu. I'm going to start with the light aqua first, and I'm going to just dust down half of that first little teardrop shape that we have here. And you can see that I'm leaving a light source over on the side there. Now I'm going to work my way into that second tier. You can see that I'm leaving those lighter auras alone, or the smaller auras alone. And then I'll work my way back into that final thicker tier in here. And you can see that I'm not being overly precious with that light aqua. My touch is pretty light here, and I'm leaving a little bit of a light source in each of these. I'm going to pick up a little bit of that darker blue and start to bring a little bit of a shadow into that teardrop shape. I'm going to bring a little bit of a shadow into that second tier, and you'll notice that I'm not going to go all the way up. I'm going to leave a little bit of that light aqua showing. And with this darker blue color, I don't have to press that hard in order to get it to show up. What I'm really looking for is just creating a shadow inside of these little flowers to give them a little bit of interest. I'm going to come back in and I'm going to press harder at the bottom just to get a little bit of drama out of the color. And then I'm going to pick up that light blue again, and I'm just going to blur my edges by very lightly working over where I have that darker blue meeting the lighter blue. And just blurring it out. And isn't it such a pretty tangle? Oh my god, I just love this tangle so much. Now you'll notice that I've left a little bit of a light source on these. And many of you know that I love to make my Zentangles look like watercolors. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm just going to blur this up just a little bit more in the center here, leaving a little bit of a light source right there off the side. I'm going to pick back up that yellow that I was working with earlier. I'm sharpening it up really quickly just so that I can get a nice point off of it. And I'm just going to add a little bit of that yellow in here to make it look like it's got a little bit of a watercolor feature to it. So you can see right where that blue is getting into where that white is. I'm just adding a little touch of yellow, and look at what that does for that. It just makes it so interesting. So if you want to, you can go all the way around and do the Lelos and put in the blue and have some fun with this. And when we come back, we'll continue to work with that blue. Let's go ahead and continue working with the blues here. I'm going to take a little bit of the light aqua, and I'm just going to start working in these little rectangles that we have going all the way around the star. I'm going to come in with that blue, and I'm going to do a really soft light dusting of it. And you're going to notice that I'm going to leave a light source in that upper right hand corner of the square here. And then I'm going to pick up a little bit of that darker blue, and I'm going to start to create a shadow. Let's go ahead and zoom in on that a little bit. Now once I've got that the way that I want it here, I'm going to start to press a little bit harder on that darker blue color to get a little bit more emphasis on that blue. Now once I've got that, you can see that I've got this ombre going on here. I've got the light blue, I've got the medium blue, and I've got the dark blue. I'm going to start with the light blue, and you can see there's my line of demarcation. I'm going to start to do these little circles with that lighter blue to start to blur these colors into each other here. And you can see that that blends out really nicely. You'll notice that I'm not going all the way back into the darker blue. I'm actually going to leave that with a little bit of emphasis. And as I come back up to the lighter blue, I'm lightening my touch as I move away, so that I get a really nice soft blend. Now remember that idea of a little bit of watercolor in this? I'm going to pick up that yellow again and just bring in a little tease of that yellow in here. And you can see that that makes it look like watercolor. I'm going to go around to each of these and do that same thing in each of them. You go ahead and do yours as well. So before we start to bring some color into the center of this piece, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick back up my pen here, and I'm going to come into the center of our tangle here, and I'm going to start to make a fairly large orb in the center. And you can see that I'm really focusing on where all of the lines meet in the center. Now I'm going to start to work my way around the outside of the center by placing some orbs, and I'm getting about 2 orbs in between each line. You can see that I'm really taking my time with this and just working my way around the piece. Remember to breathe while you're working on it. And so we're building a nice center point for the piece. Now I'm going to pick up my Identi pen for this. This is a nice thick-nibbed pen, and I talk about this pen a lot in my classes, and it's just one of those pens that I reach for quite a bit. And I'm going to go ahead and fill in the center of my tangle here. And I just love the look of that black graphite in the center. It just makes it so that it really pops and brings your eye into the center of the piece. I am going to pick up a little bit of a white pen here, and I'm going to start to just bring in a little bit of a highlight into the center. So I've got a little bit of the Jelly Roll 10 here, and I'm just getting it started on my hand. And all I'm going to do is just bring in a really nice highlight right here at the top, just to really bring the eye in as a nice focal point. Now once I've got that, I am going to pick back up my yellow and my red that I was working with earlier, and these are going to be a highlight through the piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start just by bringing in a little bit of yellow on each side, and you'll notice that I'm going to leave a little center point of light that is going to work its way through that almost diamond-like shape. And I'll go ahead and I'll zoom in on that. And then once I do that, I'm going to go ahead and bring in just a little bit of red right on the edge. And this is the same color combination as on what is in the outside tangle, those flowers that we were working with earlier, Lelu. And I'm going to start to blur this out and start to soften it up. I'm sorry, not Lelu, but the impatience. So you can see that I'm just kind of going back and forth and getting this really nice shading that is happening in these petals. And what I love about this is that it starts to bring a little bit of dimension into the piece. So I'm going to go all the way around and use that same technique in each of these diamonds to really get it to pop right off the page. Isn't that just such a cool tangle to shade? I just love it. So I'm picking up some graphite here. I've got my graphite pencil and I've got my little blending stump here. Remember, if you don't have a blending stump, you can go into the bathroom and get a Q-tip, and those work great in a pinch. So I'm going to start by coming in right to where this star is here, and you can see that I'm going to just add a little bit of graphite at the bottom of each of those triangles. And then I'm just going to give it a little blur up. Now you'll notice that at the point I'm leaving it light, okay? So I'm going to go all the way around and do that in those triangles. Now once I've had a chance to bring that graphite in there, I'm also going to take that graphite and carry it. So I'm going to start to work inside of this larger piece right here. I'm going to take that graphite that I was working with and I'm just going to work up the side of our V's that we have here. Now I'm just going very, very lightly with that graphite and letting it roll right up the top of each side. And I'm going to let it go all the way up to the top. And then I'll take my blending stump and I'll start to bring in a blur of that graphite. Now you'll notice that I'm leaving a light source in the center of where this piece is. You can see that there's like a light source right in here. And that's just going to really bring your eye right into where that tangle is. And I just love the way that that looks. I'm also going to bring in just a touch of graphite into the base of the flower here and where we have these nice auras, and I'm just going to allow that to move upward, but you'll notice that I'm leaving the light source up at the top, and I just think that brings a real elegance into that tangle. So go ahead and work with your graphite. Remember to leave the light source around your tangle so that it almost highlights it. And then when we come back, we're going to add in a color that's going to go right down the stem. So I'm going to pick up a little green here to go with my graphite. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just bring in a little bit of green to go down the stem in here. Now you'll notice that in the center I'm going to leave a little bit of a light source, and then over here I'm going to bring in a little bit of green. Now I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit, and I'm going to add just a touch of graphite into the green, and this is going to kind of model that green, give it more of an earthy feel instead of that kind of light feeling that sometimes lime peel green could do. And by the way, lime peel green is PC1005. We use it a lot in my classes, and I just love that it has kind of this earthy, lighter tone, but I also love to add graphite to it. So I'm just coming in and adding a little graphite at the bottom of the stem here, and then I'll blur that into the green, and that just really gives that green this kind of earthy, almost metallic kind of feel to it. So I'm going to go around to all of these and do just that. So I'm taking a little bit of this green and I'm carrying it right around the outside edge of this V that we have here. I'm also going to take a little bit of that graphite that I was using, and I'm going to just bring a little bit out on the edge, and I'm going to blur it out just a little bit. I almost want this to feel like the color is seeping out from that main centerpiece, but with the green it just gives it a little bit of lift off the page. So I'm going to do that on each of these down in here as well, just to get it to pop up just a little bit. So I really love the way that that lifts up off of the page. I'm going to go ahead and just bring in my white pen one more time here. I'm just going to get it started, and I'm going to bring some highlights into our flowers here. You can see that I'm just going into the center of this and bringing in a little highlight here. If you wanted to bring a little highlight out into the other petals, you could do that as well, just by bringing in a little bit of a highlight there. I'm going to also bring in a little bit of a highlight into where our little impatiens are out here as well, just by giving them a little bit of an arch. And you can see that I'm kind of going for the darkest part of those impatiens. So go ahead and play, have fun with that white pen, and bring in some highlights. And by the way, the white pen is the Jelly Roll 10 by Sakura. So I've gone ahead and I've added my chop down here in the corner, and your chop is just your way of acknowledging that you've finished the piece and that you're ready to let it go. It's also a really great time to offer gratitude for the decision you made to honor yourself with a little bit of creativity time. Now I am going to bring back in my original piece here, and I'm just going to line these two up with each other. Now they don't match completely, but it really is neat to see the way these two are corresponding with each other. I really wasn't planning it, but when I was playing with them earlier, I did notice that they lined up in a very interesting way, and I imagine that you could make a really beautiful mosaic with it. Now, of course, I did do things a little bit differently with this one. I added the black in the center, and over here you can see I had a little peace sign that I actually added more color into in the center. And you know me, every time I come back, I always try something a little bit different. So if you enjoyed the class, please give the class a thumbs up. Even better, leave a nice review, and even best, share the class with a friend. If you know somebody that is wanting to get creative with color and wanting to try Zentangle, it's always great if you can share this with them, and we can share more color with Zentangle and other people and grow our community, which would be great. I would love it if you hit the subscribe button. That way you're always going to be alerted when I add new classes to the channel, which I do pretty often. And I'd love to see your work over at our Tangled Yogi Art Community page on Facebook. We have such a lovely community there, and I'd love to see your creations. Well, all right, that's it for me. I'm Rami Marks, your Tangled Yogi. Thanks so much for joining us today. I hope this class brought you a little bit of quiet and a little bit of peace. Bye for now.